The Plaza Accord, a seismic event that rocked the foundations of Japan's economy, was a watershed moment, sparking a chain reaction that would reverberate through the decades. Its long-term effects linger even today, casting a long shadow over Japan's economic landscape. In the early 80s, Japan was a vibrant economic powerhouse. Its post-war recovery had been nothing short of miraculous, and it was a global leader in technology and manufacturing. But beneath the surface, tensions were brewing. The United States was grappling with a soaring trade deficit, and Japan, with its rapidly growing economy, was seen as a key contributor. This set the stage for what would become one of the most significant economic interventions of the 20th century. As we step into the early 80s, Japan was not just growing, but booming. Its economy was surging at an unprecedented pace, fueled by a potent cocktail of technological innovation and manufacturing prowess. Japan had transformed into a global powerhouse, with its products, particularly electronics and automobiles, flooding markets worldwide. This was the era of Sony Walkmans, Nintendo Entertainment Systems, and Honda Civics, symbols of Japan's dominance. In Japan, the economic boom had profound effects on the lifestyle and culture of its citizens. Cities were thriving, neon lights were illuminating the streets of Tokyo, and the country was brimming with optimism. The average Japanese citizen had more disposable income than ever before, and the world was marveling at the Japanese miracle. However, this rapid growth and success did not go unnoticed. Other nations, especially the United States, began to view Japan's economic power with growing concern. As Japan's trade surplus ballooned, the United States found itself grappling with a soaring trade deficit. This was the golden era of Japan's economy, but it also sowed the seeds of future challenges. On September 22, 1985, finance ministers and central bank governors from 5 major economies, the United States, Japan, West Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, gathered at the Plaza Hotel in New York City. The goal was to address the burgeoning trade imbalance, primarily between the United States and Japan. The solution? A coordinated effort to devalue the US dollar against the Japanese yen and the German mark. This was the birth of the Plaza Accord. In the immediate aftermath, the accord seemed to be a success. The value of the dollar dropped by over 50% against the yen and the mark. The US trade deficit began to decrease. But for Japan, the repercussions were far from beneficial. As the sun set on New York City, the Plaza Hotel, a symbol of luxury and power, became the chosen venue for a historical meeting. The Plaza, a century-old edifice, had seen countless significant events unfold within its walls, but none perhaps as globally impactful as the one about to take place. The atmosphere inside the gilded conference room was thick with tension. Finance ministers and central bank governors from 5 of the world's largest economies were poised at the precipice of a decision that would reverberate through the global economy. The air was heavy with anticipation and fraught with the weight of responsibility. As the agreement was reached, the room filled with a mix of relief and apprehension. The US representatives breathed easier, hopeful that their trade deficit would decrease. But for the Japanese delegates, the decision was a bitter pill to swallow. The devaluation of the dollar meant the appreciation of the yen, spelling potential trouble for Japan's booming export economy. The Plaza Hotel, once a symbol of opulence, became the birthplace of the Plaza Accord, a decision that would shape the global economic landscape for decades to come. The echoes of that fateful meeting still linger in its grand halls, a silent reminder of the day the world's financial axis tilted. The sudden surge in the value of the yen made Japanese exports significantly more expensive. The country's manufacturers, who had been the backbone of its economic boom, were hit hard. Japan entered a period of stagnation, and the government responded by initiating a series of fiscal and monetary policies to stimulate the economy. These measures, however, resulted in the creation of a massive asset price bubble. In the late 80s, property and stock prices in Japan skyrocketed, only to crash spectacularly at the beginning of the 90s. This marked the onset of a period known as the Lost Decade, characterized by economic stagnation and deflation. The Lost Decade, a term that would come to define an era of economic stagnation and deflation in Japan, was a direct fallout of the Plaza Accord. It was during this dark period that Japan, once an economic powerhouse, found itself struggling to regain its lost momentum. The impact was profound and widespread. Unemployment soared, businesses shuttered, and the once vibrant economy seemed to be in a continuous state of recession. The government, in an attempt to breathe life back into the economy, initiated a series of fiscal and monetary measures. However, these often led to short-lived recoveries and were followed by deeper recessions. During this period, the Japanese people bore the brunt of the economic hardship. Personal stories emerged of lifelong employees being laid off, of families losing their homes, and of a generation of young adults struggling to find their footing in a faltering job market. The Lost Decade was a dark period in Japan's history, a time when the economic sun seemed to set on the land of the rising sun. Its effects were far-reaching and long-lasting, creating ripples that are still felt in Japan's economic and social landscape today. Despite various attempts at economic revival, Japan has been unable to break free from the grip of the Plaza Accord. The shadow of that fateful day in September 1985 still looms large over the country's economy. To recap, the Plaza Accord was a monumental event that had far-reaching consequences. It was a response to the US's rising trade deficit, with Japan being a primary focus. The devaluation of the dollar against the yen initially seemed to work in favor of the US, but for Japan, it triggered a series of economic downturns. The resulting asset bubble and its subsequent burst led to the Lost Decade, and the effects are still felt today. Voiceover. The Plaza Accord wasn't an isolated event with isolated repercussions. Its impact rippled across the globe, leaving indelible marks on other major economies. The devaluation of the dollar against the yen didn't only affect Japan and the US, it also altered the dynamics of the global trade landscape. Countries with significant trade relations with the US, such as Germany and the United Kingdom, found their economies in flux as the dollar's value shifted. The change in currency rates meant their exports to the US became more expensive, impacting their trade balances. The Plaza Accord also led to shifts in international economic policies. Many nations began to recognize the potential pitfalls of unregulated currency markets and the dangers of economic decisions made without considering global ripple effects. Countries started to place a greater emphasis on economic cooperation and coordination, leading to a more interconnected global economy. But perhaps the most significant impact was the lessons other nations learned from Japan's experience. The struggles Japan faced served as a stark warning, highlighting the potential consequences of economic decisions that don't consider the long-term impacts. The Plaza Accord serves as a reminder of the interconnectedness of our world and the potential consequences of economic decisions. Our economies are intertwined, and a ripple in one can create waves in another. The story of the Plaza Accord serves as a potent reminder of how global economic decisions can have profound and lasting effects on individual nations. It underscores the interconnectedness of our world and the need for careful consideration in international economic policy making. And for Japan, it's a stark reminder of a past that continues to shape its present.